So originally the plan was to make a video on a manga that I considered to be 10 out of 10. Manga that had little to no flaws or things that I would want to change. But as I was practicing for this video in my car while driving, I realized that all the manga I was talking about happened to be made by women. So that gave me the idea to make this video about some fantastic manga that happened to have female mangaka. So, yeah. Hey guys, it's me Ash, and I hope you enjoy. Starting off with a manga that you probably already heard of, Dorahidoro by Hayashida Q. The story revolves around Kaiman, who does not remember who he was before he was transfigured by a magic user. This transformation left him with a reptile's head, and a desire to find out the truth about who he really is. Accompanied by Nikaido, his female companion, he tracks down magic users in the hole, and unceremoniously chomps down on their head, hoping to find out who it was that put him in that state. One by one, they witnessed the second man inside the head of Kaiman, and after pulling them back out of his mouth, he asked them all a question. What did the guy inside my head say? Dorahidoro is just fantastic. I cannot sing the praises of this manga enough. It is weird, it is cryptic, and it is just full of heart and love. Hayashida has a beautiful, sketchy, messy, grotesque art style, but also draws some of the cutest faces you've ever seen. Kaiman is a wonderful protagonist, his relationship with Nikaido throughout the series is just adorable, and I love their friendship, and it's just, it's the best. And it's not just them, you have fantastic characters like Shin, you have Noi, who I think you may have seen on Twitter, you have loving characters like Fujita and Ebisu and Kikurage and En, and it's like, I could just keep going on and just listing everyone, and this manga is just, it's just like that, dude. It had a really good adaptation by MAPPA that came under fire because, look, CGI, but like, they clearly put a lot of love into this adaptation, and I can always commend them for that. The whole is just a great setting, it's grimy, decrepit, people are just dying on the streets, but everyone's just kind of doing their best to live. Everyone's just kind of hanging out, and they've accepted, like, yeah, this is what the world is like now, but it's fine. And I just adore manga like that. Manga that's not necessarily post-apocalyptic, but basically, the world kind of ended, or the world is not in the best condition, but everyone's just kind of living and moving on with their lives. They're doing the best they can, and it's really commendable. I love the human spirit. I love seeing it in action in such dire situations and settings. It's the best, dude. It gives you hope, you know? The most compelling thing about Dorahidoro for me when I was reading it was the mystery aspect as to what exactly happened to Kaiman. Who is Kaiman? Who cursed him? Who is the guy inside of Kaiman? And the best part is, it's not so easy to be spoiled on. It's a lot more complicated than this guy cursed Kaiman and this is who the guy inside of Kaiman is. Like, no, there is a lot more to it than that. I also love that there kind of is no fear of death in this manga because, spoiler alert, Kikurage can bring back the dead. And that's not really much of a spoiler because the manga is able to create tension without the fear of death hanging over everyone. Which I gotta commend them for, because how do you make tension when death is eliminated? But they found a way, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but it is awesome, I love it. Having finished publication a few years ago, Hayashida has moved on to Die Dark, which is just as crazy and just as fun as Dorahidoro, so if you're a fan of Dorahidoro, I give you all my blessings to go read Die Dark. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Fujimoto, our man Fujimoto, the guy who made Chainsaw Man, straight up said when Chainsaw Man was confirmed to get an anime adaptation, he said, and I quote, "Chainsaw Man is like a copycat of Dorahidoro and Jujutsu Kaisen. And the studio of Dorahidoro and Jujutsu Kaisen will produce its anime? I have nothing to say. Please do it." So, if you want to read one of the biggest inspirations behind one of the most popular manga of the past decade, give Dorahidoro a read. I cannot stress that enough. Next on the agenda, we got Dungeon Meshi, aka Delicious in Dungeon by Kui Ryoko. After his sister is devoured by a dragon and losing all their supplies in a failed dungeon raid, Laios and his party are determined to save his sister before she gets digested. Completely broke and having to resort to eating monsters as food, they meet a dwarf who will introduce them to the world of Dungeon Meshi, delicious cuisine made from ingredients such as the flesh of giant bats, walking mushrooms, or even screaming mandrakes. This manga, along with another one I'll be talking about later, are set to get an anime adaptation soon, and I am really excited for both of them. Dungeon Meshi is so wonderfully drawn and written that I really cannot sing its praises enough, just like Dorahidoro, and that's also why I consider these manga to be 10 out of 10. I have nothing bad to say about them. It could have easily been an isekai manga, but instead this manga is more based on Dungeons and Dragons, if you're a fan of that, which I am, which makes this a lot better for me. The entire party of Chilchak, Elias, Marcel, Ichizumi, and Senshi, they're the best. I love the dynamic, it is so great. This dude has a wife and children. The story progression is also pretty great too, because you have a lot of jokes towards the beginning, and a couple of serious moments here and there, but there's a clear point where the story just kind of shifts, and it never really recovers from that, in a good way. It's after the introduction of a certain character where the story starts to take a darker turn, and you begin to realize more and more about the dungeon that they're traversing, as well as the world as a whole. It doesn't fall into any of the trappings of common isekai manga, and it has no trouble standing on its own as a great fantasy manga. The world crafted by Ryoko is just fantastic and is not just for manga, but I can easily see be turned into a video game or something else, I really cannot sing the praises of the art enough too. I love how diverse the body types are of all the cast, and they are just so great to look at, let alone following along for the story. And there's a lot of characters in this manga, not just Elias' party, but you have multiple other parties to consider, factions, individual operators, etc. But the manga does a great job of easing you into it, so it never feels overwhelming. And this is all without me even commenting on the food aspect, because there is so much love into each and every meal that Senshi prepares for everyone, and it's adorable. They take all the common fantasy monsters, or monsters you can find in Dungeons and Dragons, and turn them into some form of food for the party to eat. And the facial expressions are just top notch. I love that they include recipes as though we can just go out and make this on our own. There's an adventurer's guidebook that Ryoko also released, which I also recommend giving a look into, after you've read Dungeon Meshi, of course. The manga is almost over. I think we have maybe like a couple of chapters left, but I am so looking forward to the ending. If you're a fan of fantasy, if you're a fan of food, if you're a fan of good media, then I just say go for this one. It is worth it, the effort, and it is fantastic. Cooking in and of itself is an art, but on the topic of art, I want to talk about Blue Period for a little bit. Written by Yamaguchi Tsubasa, Yatora is the perfect high school student, with good grades and lots of friends. It's an effortless performance and ultimately a dull one. But he wanders into the art room one day, and a lone painting captures his eye, awakening him to a kind of beauty he never knew. Compelled and consumed, he dives in headfirst. He's about to learn how savage and unforgiving art can be. I've been an artist for most of my life, since I was 3, and I'm not the best in the world, but what matters is I'm trying and doing my best. I've consumed a lot of media, media that depicts how artists behave, act, etc., typically portraying them as eccentric, but I don't think anything comes as close to depicting the actual nature of an artist's life than Blue Period. It's such a heart-wrenching and compelling manga that doesn't fall into despair, but instead just tackles real-life human beings, their emotions, their thoughts, and what they go through, and just life as a whole. After all, you only have one life to live, so you just want to do something that'll make you happy, I can do a video on Blue Period alone, if I'm being honest, and honestly, I could do a video on any of the manga I talk about today, but there are just a few key moments I want to talk about today that just might sell you on Blue Period, even if you're not an artist. So, Chapter 1 has our boy Yatora, who is a delinquent, he goofs off, doesn't really go to class, but he's still a good student academically. He and his boys are out partying until the wee hours in the morning, and while they're on their way back, he takes a drag of his cigarette, and he sees the city being basked in that blue sunlight, and he falls in love. He really never was big on art, but he was tasked by his art teacher to produce a picture of his favorite scenery. So he tried recreating that scene of the early morning. And when he finished it, as scratchy and messy as it was, and he hung it up and his boys recognized what that scene was, he starts crying. For the first time in his life, he did something that made him feel something. And that moment resonated so hard with me and a lot of my friends who read this manga. And this is just chapter 1. This whole series has a bunch of wonderful moments that just stick with you. And I'm going to talk about one more that haunts me to this day. I want you to know that when I was practicing for this video while driving and I was talking about this scene, I actually started tearing up in the car. I teared up. I didn't even have the pages in front of me, but I was tearing up thinking about this scene. So this scene takes place a few chapters later, where he decided he wants to go to art college and he's trying to sell his parents on it, who are understandably dubious. So for Mother's Day, Yatora makes his mom a portrait. And I'm just gonna read the interaction here. His mom says, "Thanks, but this is about college, right? That's why you drew this? If that's what this is, then I can't honestly." Before Yatora cuts her off and says, "That's right. But I drew this because I couldn't express myself in my own words. I tried to think about why I want to go to TUA, but I couldn't come up with an answer. At first, I decided on TUA because the tuition was cheap, but if art school is out of question from the start, then that's not a convincing reason, is it? The truth was, I didn't have a reason to go. Just that I wanted to go, so I was searching for a reason. The thing about art is that you can communicate things that you can't communicate in words. Because of that, I've come to notice the world is filled with interesting things and ideas. It's about knowing rather than seeing, and understanding rather than creating. At first, I thought it would make the conversation easier if I drew something like a portrait for Mother's Day. But as I was drawing it, I noticed some things. Like that your hands are damaged and peeling because you're always washing the dishes with hot water, or that your arms are pretty muscular from always carrying around heavy shopping bags. When I draw like this, I begin to recall more and more things, like how you alternate between meat and fish for dinner every day, or that you always take the dishes that look the worst during meals, that you only ever think of your family. If I never made art, I wouldn't have even noticed these things. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for not being a good son." I have no words for the irreparable damage that scene does to me, and I just say, go read this manga. Go do yourself a favor. Go read this. Last but certainly not least for this video is Witch Hat Atelier by Shirahama Kamamome. In a world where everyone takes wonders like magic spells and dragons for granted, Coco is a girl with a simple dream. She wants to be a wizard. But everyone knows magicians are born, not made, and she was not born with a gift for magic. Resigned to her unmagical life, Coco is about to give up on her dream until the day she meets Kyufri, a mysterious traveling magician. After secretly watching him perform magic in a way she's never seen before, Coco soon learns what everyone knows might not be the truth and discovers that her magical dream may not be as far away as it seems. This is a beautiful manga that, like Dungeon Meshi, is getting an anime adaptation in the near future, and I'm really excited for that. It has one of the best art styles I've ever seen in any manga. It is absolutely phenomenal in how everyone's drawn, they're unique, I love their hair, I love the little details, I love this freaking thing. The characters are so naturally well written and behave like functioning human beings, which is pretty hard to come by in manga these days if I'm being honest. The magic system is super unique in the sense that it's built around art, specifically depicting your own magic glyphs using magic ink. And that brings us to the biggest caveat of the world of Witch Hat Atelier, is that anyone could technically use magic if they're in possession of these items. And that's where a point of conflict comes from, because on one hand, yes, it makes sense you wouldn't want evil or powerful people in control of magic because who knows what they could do with it, but at the same time, what about people who desperately need help? What about those who are burdened with sickness or disability that could be healed by magic, but you refuse to teach them due to some pre-existing rules that say that you can't? I really like it, especially due to the fact that Coco herself was someone who happened to learn magic by pure chance by being exposed to Gojo using it. So when she sees people who are suffering due to not having magic, she has to bite her tongue and also question why exactly can we not teach them? And of course, this is without me talking about literally everything else about this manga that makes it so fantastic. You have a cast of wonderfully written characters of all ages, all body types, all diversities. They all have their own goals, ambitions, personalities, and they're all great to watch. You have a fantastic fantasy setting with wonderful creature designs and a magic system that rocks, and all sorts of things going for it. You have some of the prettiest art mankind has ever bestowed upon us in the manga medium. Good lord, look at these spreads, bro. I can go on and on about what makes this one fantastic, but really, if you haven't been sold at this point, I just say go read the first chapter and come back to me, because it is such a worthwhile ride that will not leave you disappointed. It's still ongoing. The only manga that's not ongoing that I talked about today is Dorahidoro, but Dungeon Meshi, like I mentioned before, is very close to ending. Coco's coming of age is fantastic, and seeing her make new friends all while trying to save her mom who got frozen in a block of ice, it's really endearing, it's really powerful, it's just really, really good, and I cannot sing its praises enough. And that about covers it for this week's video. Like I mentioned, I could easily make full videos for any of the manga I talked about today, but I wanted to keep it as it is due to the fact that I don't have that much free time. Honestly, I would love to have this be my full-time job and just me talking about manga and things that I love, but until I can reach that point, I just gotta keep working at it, so hope you guys bear with me until then. All 4 manga are fantastic and available here in the West, in America, through legal means such as Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, etc. So I highly recommend you go pick any of them up. Want to thank all my patrons who are supporting me, including Joe Papa 73, Sour Lolita, Borpalest Vunny, Real Settery, Tai Tai, Vento, Sea Crowns, Kiwi Kiwi, Sneaky the New Guy, V, Andrew, Audrey, Braystar, Songon, Amaterasu, Logan, Sianaru, Jiva, and Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for your support over the years. You guys keep me going. Thank you all, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Take it easy.